Right, boys, so today we're starting a new topic. So you need to start a new page in your book, and our topic is called Investigating Data. So data is a topic that you should be able to understand. There's no real excuses for not doing well in this, and it is actually pretty interesting. So firstly, we're going to look at just the shape of a frequency distribution. Really, that should say, I'm just going by the textbook heading here, but really it should say frequency histogram, I would say, would be a better way of describing it. Or polygon. So we're just looking at the shape of the graph. A distribution is actually a table. So we're not really looking at the shape of a table, we're looking at the shape of the graph here. And the graph we're looking at is a histogram or a polygon. Now, we can still extend these things into dot plots and stem and leaf plots, and we're going to be doing that later on. Okay, so just the general things about it firstly. Number one, we're looking at a symmetrical histogram or polygon or graph here. I'll just keep referring to them as graphs. So in this graph, it looks like that. That one that I've drawn there is actually often called a normal curve or a bell curve. They use that shape when they're doing scaling for the HSC. So any scaling to do with the actual mark that you get in a subject is done like this. It also is done a little bit like that when they look at the ATAR, but they actually will lower all your marks in a lot of ways. So but just looking at your subject marks, they will have a predetermined idea of where they want that mean to be. Okay, so in this case we have half our scores on this side, the lower side, and half our scores here. It's evenly split. You can see it's very symmetrical around this line. This score down the bottom here of that peak is the mean. It's also the mode and it's the median. So all of them converge on that one point. Okay, so having a look at the other ones that we have. The negatively skewed one, now these I think are a bit difficult to remember because they don't seem to make sense to me the way they're worded. Anything that we think of as negative, when we look in any graphs that we're doing, like if it's a negative gradient, it would normally be that direction, going decreasing as you look at it from left to right. This is actually doing the opposite, so you're just going to have to learn these ones. But negatively skewed has more high scores. So if you look along here at a higher score, here's your low scores, here's your high scores, that's where its peak is going to be. It's going to have a lot more people get high scores. So you're going to have a high mode in that case. All right, so that would happen if we were doing a test and the class did really well. We would have lots of people getting high marks, some people getting higher than that, a few people still getting low marks, but not many. All right, most people are up here. The next one is positively skewed. Again, it's the opposite of what you sort of think. It's going to positively skewed is heading in that direction, opposite to what you think, and it has more low scores. So here's your low scores here, and there's lots of people getting them. So if we gave you a hard exam or we gave you a test and none of you were ready for it, or you hadn't studied, we might get lots of people getting a low mark. That's what we've got in this case. Right, so that's positively skewed. The next one you have to know is bimodal. Bi means two. Modal is modes. So we have two modes. So in this case, it actually has two peaks. All right, so we have a mode here and a mode here. You could look at what's happening with COVID-19 and see that, that happens sometimes. This is when we're going into lockdown. This is when we're going okay, and this is when we're going into lockdown. So when the case numbers, the frequency, the number of COVID-19 cases rises, that's when they get worried. We go into lockdown, the cases go down again, then somehow we start spreading it around again and we have a lot more case numbers again, we go into lockdown again. So, if you look at something like what's happening in Melbourne, they've had 5 lockdowns, they would have 5 spikes in their graph. Okay, so we're going to do a lot more practice on those ones when you get back to school, but at the moment we're moving on to quartiles. So scores can be split up into groups. When you get to your HSC, and even before that, in NAPLAN, your scores were all split up into bands. All right, and when you were in Year 9 last year, your scores were split up from band 10 down to the lowest band. Okay, so they sort of would group your scores. Some of you might have got a high band 9 and just missed a 10. All right, it's the same when we grade you for school. If you've got an A or a B or a C or a D or an E, we're grouping you into groups. Okay, some of you might get a C and just miss out on a B. All right, but we are putting you into sections or groups. Okay, so what we do here, it can be split up into quartiles, which is what we're going to be working on, and a quartile is based on quart, which is quarters, or if we look at it as percentages, 25% groupings. So I'm going to split you all these scores up into 25% lots. We could split them up into deciles. All right, when I did my HSC, we used to be split into deciles. They are 10% groupings. DEC means 10. Or you could be split up into percentiles. That means every 1% you're being split up. And that's what happens when you get to your ATARs, right? When they get people that get a 98.3 ATAR, they are in the 98th percentile band, okay? They're in a percentile grouping. Somebody else might get a 64, that's their percentile grouping. They're 64% for the ATAR ranking. Okay, so we're concentrating here on just quartiles. So we have all our scores arranged from lowest to highest score. So we could do this with your next maths exam. Arrange it from the lowest class mark to the highest class mark. Then we're going to split you up further. We're going to go, okay, we're going to look at these scores, all of them. Right in the middle here is our median, because we've arranged you in order from smallest to largest. So your median will be right in the middle. And then we're going to split you up further into a quarter here and a quarter here. So we call Q1 the lower quartile. Q2 is our median and Q3 is our upper quartile. So what that means is if you get a mark here, you are just on the edge of the top 25%. If you get a mark here, you are the median. If you are here, you are just on the edge of the bottom 25% of the marks. Okay, so now we're going to build on that. We're looking at measures of dispersion. Disperse means to spread. It's what happens when you all leave school at the end of the day. You all disperse, you all go all your different ways, heading off to your homes. So that's what disperse means, to spread. So these are measures of dispersion or measures of spread. It is really important to see how scores spread away from the middle. So our middle are our 3 M's, our mean, our mode, and our median. Our mean, mode, and median. So we want to know how the scores have spread away from there. All right, so you might think, well, I only care about what the average is, I just want to know what the mean is. But you probably will actually be more concerned as you want to do better to know how far above that mean you are, because that's how all the scaling is done. Okay, so the first one we have, the first measure of dispersion or spread, you learnt back in Year 7. It's the range. It's really easy to do. You get the highest score minus the lowest score. That tells us how far spread we are from the top person in the class to the lowest person in the class. And if we're trying to grade classes, we need that not to be too far. We want a smaller range so that we've got everybody in the same sort of pocket so we can teach well to that group. Okay, the second one is the interquartile range, and that's what we're going to be learning now. So the interquartile range, I've abbreviated it IR, is done by getting Q3, which is our upper quartile, and minusing our Q1, our lower quartile. So what that does is it only focuses on this range here from here to here. So it's looking at the middle 50% of the scores. It's ignoring these people at the top 25%, and it's ignoring the bottom 25%. And you might think, well, whoa, that's a lot of people to ignore. You're ignoring 50%. But we really need to know what's going on in this middle group. Okay, I get a bit worried sometimes if I'm teaching a class and my middle isn't going well. So this middle 50% I need to be going okay, all right? Because what happens is we start heading towards the lowest common denominator and dropping, right? So I need this to be good. So I am concerned about the interquartile range for my classes. Okay, so we're going to learn how that all works and examples on it in the next video.